Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, I'm sure you guys already heard the news, but the One Piece live action Season 2 has been confirmed. But because of the writer's strike, we're probably gonna have to wait a bit longer than we would normally, which leaves us a lot of time to think and speculate, and you guys know I'm already there. So I want to talk a little bit about the first season, a little bit about the manga, all for the purposes of discussing Season 2, predictions, speculations, theories, ideas. I just get a lot of things off my chest. But I'm sure you guys already know, right? There is an infinite likelihood that a lot of the things that we say in this video, potentially everything, is just wrong. And that's okay. There's an incredible team of people working on this project, including our very own Randy Troy, so there is no doubt that they're putting every available brain cell in order to make this absolutely incredible. Most likely they are having and have been having these same sorts of discussions we're going to have today, with greater knowledge about what they can and can't do, what their objectives, aims are, what everybody wants out of the project. It's, you understand. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. So with that being said, like, subscribe, click the bell, all that stuff. Let's begin. One of the things that they changed in Season 1 was they introduced Garp far earlier in the story, as well as revealed Garp's relationship to Luffy. In my opinion, this accomplished a number of things. You have a greater marine presence in the East Blue, which is generally something I think that a lot of One Piece fans are excited for. I don't think that we really got the feeling of the Marines in the story until Smoker in Loguetown. So starting sooner adds an appeal, adds an element that both fans and non-fans will be excited to see. Simultaneously, a lot of things that happen in the East Blue happen fairly randomly. It was disjointed, it was disconnected. You got a real sense of an adventure in which anything was possible. But some of the most significant changes involved the live action connecting everything. Instead of Mihawk randomly chasing Don Krieg out of boredom, he's instead ordered by Garp because Garp has taken an interest in his grandson. Personally, I thought that this was a brilliant change, because Garp has already had experience with one of his sons, Ace, leaving and becoming a famous pirate at this point in the story. One of the things that the manga establishes is that Garp never wanted to be an admiral. He wanted to stay a vice admiral because of the freedom that that position offered him. That freedom we see evidence throughout the story allows Garp to go essentially where he wants, when he wants, with far less scrutiny. Using this, the live action established Garp more as a parental figure who actually cares what Luffy does. We see this in the manga in flashbacks. Garp doesn't want Luffy to become a pirate. And in the live action, he takes a more active role in essentially trying to stop this. So another very minor but incredibly intelligent change was they better established Luffy's reputation beginning in Shell's Town. Luffy and crew defeat Axe-Hand Morgan, and this becomes a noteworthy event, noteworthy enough for Garp to take notice. And of course, he immediately recognized his own grandson. But Garp isn't a dictator. Just like Luffy, they are actually related. He values freedom. Ultimately, Luffy can decide to become what he wants to become. But with this comes consequences. So in the journey that follows, including a lot of very interesting and new character interactions between characters such as him and Zeph, his goal is to test Luffy. Are you ready? So another thing that was accomplished with Garp is it gave a more definitive ending to Season 1. And this is very interrelated with the themes that they chose. They posed a question very early on. Why is Luffy a pirate? Why does he want to be the king of the pirates? This is actually a conversation that they included with Buggy. Buggy is like, what happened to you? You're trying to impress somebody? In my opinion, this was just another stroke of creative genius. In the manga, the East Blue is more often about people that Luffy is recruiting and less about Luffy himself. Luffy is just existing. He is a force, he goes places, things happen. You learn a lot of things about Luffy, and I don't want to suggest otherwise, but you don't really learn why he's doing it. And this doesn't come up in the manga until maybe Sabaody, where Luffy reveals that to be Pirate King is to be the most free. And when that moment happened in the manga, I think most everybody thought about Luffy a little bit differently. So the live action used Garp to convey a message. What is the reason why Luffy became a pirate? Garp had tried his best to convert Luffy into a marine and could never do it. And the reason is because I was always a pirate, Grandpa. Luffy isn't choosing to be anything other than himself. And the ability to do this is the ultimate freedom. The live action moved the appeal of, and maybe even entirely the Aokiji moment from before Water 7 here to the end of Season 1 with Garp. He wanted to make sure that Luffy understood what was in store for him. He wanted to remind Luffy of where they both stood. Once you officially become a pirate, I am your enemy. You have to be strong enough to defeat me, or you will die. Garp essentially uses fear as a tactic to convince Luffy to give it up. But our rubber boy don't fear death. And even if he did, it wouldn't matter because he doesn't think he's going to lose. He believes in himself fully. And I think that all of this was done incredibly well and created a lot of closure within the season. But it's not the only thing that does this. Like, one adventure has ended, another one begins. We begin with Koby and Alvida, and Koby is not free. He is neither able nor confident enough to speak his mind. We follow his adventure and he grows, so that by the season finale, when Garp asks the Marines to capture the Stride Pirates, Koby says, "No, that is not what I want, and that is not what's right." Some people complained about too much Koby in season 1, but I was impressed with how much they were able to do with him, and I guess my expectation is we might actually see less Koby than you expect going into season 2. Because to me, he seems ready for Marineford. When he returns to the story, even new fans would understand how Koby was able to grow to where he gets because of how much growth we see in this season alone. But the character backbone and the majority of the emotional beats of season 1 centers around the crew, and of this I think most prominently, Nami. The live action made the theft of a map to the Grand Line much more important. And I love this decision because of the importance of maps to Nami. I think it's somewhat symbolic and it better prepares us for Arlong Park. Maps are in fact an important component of the world and not easily come by. Something I think it did straight up better than the manga. Drawing a map of the world is Nami's dream, but it's this desire which ultimately traps her. She's invaluable to Arlong, and Arlong cannot let her leave. Her dreams and her talent is a shackle. And the character arc concludes with Luffy destroying Arlong Park simultaneously with Nami's chains, literally and figuratively. But what we're talking about here is we're talking about changes or differences, and Nami in the live action is not the same as Nami from the manga and the anime. I would describe her as a lot more brooding. Her character throughout the season is more similar to her character just in Arlong Park in the manga. And the reason that they chose to do this is, again, to better establish Nami as the backbone of the entire season. Given less space to work with, I think it was prudent and less confusing to make Nami a little bit more consistent. She is not happy because she is not free. But they also did an incredible job with this because Nami was so caustic from the beginning. It stood out even more in the Baratie when she felt herself relaxing and began to see herself as part of the crew. Her laughing was quite possibly the best moment, singular moment, in the entire season for me. And once again, a moment that I felt like surpassed the source material. It punched harder because of the contrast. But anyway, we could talk all day. What they did with Buggy, how they made the East Blue feel like the Yonko saga in terms of how the pirate world is all interconnected and how conquering it feels like its own small step. An absolutely brilliant decision. It's not one random adventure leading to the next. The world feels more filled out and lived in. Notoriety within the East Blue means more. But this video isn't about season 1, it's about season 2. The only reason that I brought this up is as context, for you to understand that the live action made changes, and many of these changes I thought were incredibly smart. This is not to say that I loved everything and I have no criticisms. We will see changes perhaps similar to what we saw in season 1. And it then becomes a fun game of speculating what these changes could be. All this being said, I think that season 2 is pretty much locked in, both in how I would see it and how it's probably going to happen. You need something overarching to connect the entire season, and that has to be Baroque Works. Which means that this season finishes at the conclusion of Alabasta, which works incredibly well. So with that being said, let's talk about season 2 and just, I don't know man, theory craft, fiddle around with it, have fun. I think that we're obviously going to begin season 2 in Loguetown. But in Loguetown, obviously, one of the hypest moments in the entire series was the introduction of Dragon. In the manga, the Revolutionary Army doesn't come up again for hundreds upon hundreds of chapters. Mentioned here or there, we might get a panel of Dragon, but they're largely absent from the story. In the same way in season 1, introducing Garp and having him play a more substantial role elevated it and works to the benefit of an important faction in the story. I think that the Revolutionary Army should be more prominent. And I think one of the low-hanging fruit here that would elevate the source material is a greater emphasis on Sabo. Look, Sabo was a shocking reveal at the conclusion of Marineford, and one that a lot of people questioned whether or not it was properly set up. The amnesia is one of the most controversial things in the entire story. So similar to how in the manga the Revolutionary Army is involved in Dressrosa, I would like to see the Revolutionary Army involved in Alabasta. There's a lot of similarities there. There's carryover. Doflamingo, a warlord. Crocodile, a warlord. This fits the Revolutionary Army's agenda. Frankly, it makes sense for them to be there. All you really need to do is establish that the Revolutionary Army knows that Crocodile is corrupt, and that the one to blame for this is the world government. Perhaps they in fact are selling him dance powder because they are hoping that the government of Alabasta and King Cobra falls. And they would have reason to want to do this based on recent events. And you can utilize them to set up things that aren't yet present in the story at the time of Alabasta, namely the world government itself. I'm not saying spell it out or shoot your load too soon, right? But you can begin to plant these ideas, these thoughts, this world building into the minds of those watching. Quickly increase the scope of the world and foreshadow the greater conflicts. But yeah, my opinion is that the Revolutionary Army should be present in Alabasta, but not necessarily play a crucial role. Simply be there. Could be enough. And let us see Sabo. But anyway, moving on, one of the coolest moments in Loguetown and in the entire story was when Luffy is going to die. Sorry, I'm dead. We kind of had that moment, a very similar moment, at the end of Season 1. So to begin Season 2 with the same beat, I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Not that I don't want it there, but maybe if you could move it later on, that's what I'd probably do. A clever way to integrate this is actually with dance powder once again in Alabasta. We know dance powder creates storms. And I understand that a big component of the storm that we see in Loguetown is possibly related to Dragon, who brings a storm with him, but you can still have that. And also save Luffy with lightning later on. This could also establish the power that the Marines have given Crocodile. He is a pirate, yet also the law. It's not right, it's not justice, but Crocodile can order an execution, and the Marines have to stand back and watch. But we know that Crocodile's weakness is water, and dance powder creates water. You can simultaneously foreshadow Crocodile's weakness while saving Luffy during an execution. If you wanted, this could also be a great moment for the crew to sort of figure this out and intentionally save Luffy in a clever way. Related to this is Mizu Luffy. Now, I love Mizu Luffy, but I think in live action this could prove to be difficult and expensive to do right. Personally, I think it could be prudent just to use dance powder to create rain and have a Luffy Crocodile fight where Crocodile gets wet and you don't need all sorts of special effects. Whiskey Peak seems like one of the most misunderstood arcs in One Piece, in large part because Luffy fights Zoro. I would love for them to keep this fight. I thought an interesting omission from the live action in Arlong Park is we lose the classic, the legendary speech from Luffy, things that he can't do. And I think that this speech is important heading into Whiskey Peak. Because if Luffy can't do all of these things, then the only thing that he can do is fight. A natural question that would occur to anybody following One Piece is, why is Zoro not the captain? Zoro is strong too. Minus his injury to Mihawk, I believed, and most people believed at this point in the story, Zoro could have defeated Arlong. So Whiskey Peak poses this question of why Luffy is the captain, and it establishes that Zoro does not have a lot of faith in the decisions Luffy makes as captain. Essentially, Luffy is too trusting, and that makes him easily tricked. If I were to do a significant rewrite of the content that I expect within Season 2 of the live action, this is something I would highlight more. One, that Luffy has room to grow as the captain. He's not perfect yet. But two, he is the captain and possesses a unique set of skills Zoro does not, which is why he should be captain. I think that the story can use Vivi to highlight why Luffy's trusting nature is integral to the Strat Crew's success. Simultaneously establish Zoro as a distrustful person who believes that he needs to act as the captain in certain situations because Luffy is unable. But when it comes to people, he needs to trust Luffy's judgment, even when it may seem illogical. Personally, I think that this holds a lot of promise as a theme to carry the entire season. Season 1 poses the question of why Luffy is a pirate. Season 2 poses the question of why Luffy is the captain. And this would transition perfectly at the end of Season 2 when Robin joins the crew. A decision that Zoro does not understand and does not trust. but must respect. Just make sure you throw out the line where Luffy says that he's going to kill Zoro. Easy cut. In my opinion, even if it might be expensive or difficult, you have to keep giants as giants in the live action. Similar to the Sea King in Season 1, I think the giants' presence in all of their glory could be one of the biggest selling points of the entire season. So just do it, and the island goldfish as well. Straight up, I think that they should really go in on Ace, and we should spend more time with him. One of the limitations of the live action compared to the manga and anime is simply less time for the story. But if the plan is 6 total seasons, we probably know where that's going to end. So this is the time where new fans can get to know and fall in love with Ace. And you can really hammer in as well the Yonko and the in-game pirate world. But I understand talk is cheap, and what I'm saying here doesn't really clarify how you would utilize Ace. So in my opinion, it'll take some creativity. New interactions and scenes. Ace as part of the plot. Ace is basically used in a similar way as Garp in Season 1. Adding original content. I believe that this will be very rewarding for the story. But if you need some kind of justification, then maybe Baroque Works has some clue as to where Blackbeard is, which is why Ace is interested in following along with the Straw Hats. Likewise, I think that Robin should be emphasized more in the live action, partly because of time constraints, partly because, there's just so much that you could do with her, and we've already included the Revolutionary Army into this. Robin eventually has a connection with the Revolutionary Army that can expound upon her journey, her character, and her dreams. Explain her more fully, to prepare people for the end. But here, multiple birds with one stone, you could do a lot. Another promising theme that can be used as a backbone of Season 2 is what it means to be a pirate. This is an important concept in Drum Island, where to Dr. Huluk, a pirate flag represents the ability to do the impossible. This works simultaneously to justify why Chopper joins the crew. Chopper is a doctor who wants to do the impossible, and he's taught that being a pirate is the way. So in my opinion, this concept should be highlighted at the season's conclusion, essentially as a justification. This is why Chopper joined the crew, because they did the impossible. This would also act to make the season feel a little less disjointed. One of the critiques that I have of Season 1, and this is not the fault of the live action, it's just disjointed, because we're going to different islands, we're recruiting different members, it's a lot of small stories. And the pacing, in my opinion, was frantic. And as we've already discussed, they did a lot of things to minimize this feeling. And I think that they could do so with Drum Island. Essentially incorporate it with the greater arc of Verse Crocodile and Baroque Works, so it doesn't feel like a side adventure amongst the whole. One way that I would go about doing this, aside from just incorporating Baroque Works into Drum Island, is spread the themes of the arc out along the entirety of the season. As Nami is kind of a focal point of Season 1, I think Vivi and Chopper are the focal points, or should be the focal points, of Season 2. Season 1 used maps as a symbol and expanded upon their importance in the story in ways I felt surpassed the manga. The same thing can be accomplished with pirate flags. Expand on how the flags represent a pirate crew and their ideology. And you can even add something creative into this, like somebody steals the Strat flag and they must retrieve it. But another reason why this could be a prudent decision is I'm not entirely certain how much of the Foxy arc is going to be included in the live action. There's elements of it and I love that arc, but I just can't imagine that they spend a lot of time there. And more of this discussion of pirate flags comes up there. So maybe move it forward. And you can work this into the end as well when Vivi decides not to join the Straw Hat crew. And she can look at the flag of Alabasta and be reminded of what that flag means to her and her duty. But like I said, I'm going for this feeling of closure at the end. And I'm also kind of structuring this in a way in which you could possibly do it in 8 episodes rather than 10. But essentially, I want Chopper joining the crew to feel rewarding at the conclusion of the season rather than at the beginning, intermixed with our feelings about Robin and Vivi. So in order to make this possible, I think Chopper needs to play a bigger role in Alabasta. And frankly, this is a critique you can make of the manga, that in Drum Island Chopper joins, and then in Alabasta, Chopper doesn't really stand out. This feeling will most likely be exacerbated in the live action just because of time restraints. We're probably not going to spend too much time in Drum Island, so the reward of Chopper in that story is going to be less, and if there's less Chopper in Alabasta, fans are going to feel like they missed something. This is almost like one for one what the live action did with Usopp. I didn't feel like Syrup Village did a lot of justice for Usopp. I didn't really feel like the live action conveyed why Usopp joined or his character very well in his own arc. But they made up for it somewhat at the end when Usopp got a solo fight, a 1v1 fight in Arlong Park. It's like they kind of knew the story needed a little bit more Usopp. And it stands out all the more because Sanji's arc in the Baratie really conveyed Sanji's character and reason for joining much better, and he was less emphasized in Arlong Park. So how do you work Chopper into Alabasta? And in my opinion, you have to play off of Chopper's role on the crew as a doctor. And the fact is that just the same as in Drum Island in Alabasta, there's a sickness that a doctor, a normal medical doctor, would be unable to cure. But this is the essence of Chopper's dream as a doctor doing the impossible, curing things that can't be cured. This will 1,000,000% not happen because I think fans would be too outraged by it. But at the end of Alabasta, you have a bomb. And one of the most controversial things that has ever happened in One Piece is Pell going to fly the bomb away and dying but not dying. So yeah, let's not do that. And maybe a cool way to integrate Drum Island with Alabasta, essentially combine these arcs, is remove the bomb. Again, you could have a moment, a Mr. Prince moment, an intelligent moment of a bait and switch. Instead of an explosive bomb going off, Alubarna is drenched in sakura flowers, from a keepsake that Chopper took with him after Dr. Huluk died, which would end the Alabasta arc visually in an explosive way. And it allows Chopper to naturally reflect at the end about his mentor. And these feelings and tears will be additive to what's already in the manga and how everybody felt reading the end of it with Vivi. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that if you try to stick everything related to Chopper in Drum Island, it's probably not going to land exactly right. Because in my opinion, in the manga and the anime, it's definitely one of those arcs that benefits from slow pacing. I don't think that you can rush tears. And tears are what Drum Island was all about for me. Holding some of that back, making it linger, and delivering it at the end could be rewarding. But coming back to reality, in the manga, I would say that the thing that highlights Chopper in Alabasta is learning how to be a pirate. Fighting is not something that's intuitive to him and was a big part of Chopper's learning curve. So I would expect that this is really what they do with Chopper in Alabasta. And it'll end up being much more similar to the manga than anything that I've suggested here. And I think that most fans would probably prefer that. It is by far the safer choice, and yeah, it's likely. But if this is the case, I am of the opinion that they have to absolutely nail Drum Island. It has to be an absolute high point of the entire season. It's just one of those times where I feel like changes could do a lot of good if you took the risk and did it right. I feel like it's going to be all too easy to essentially have the Belle Mere experience of Season 1. Nami's flashback was one of the greatest moments of the entire story for me, and when it happened in the live action, that's one moment that just didn't resonate with me, because it was too fast. And they left out critical elements which made me feel things. Anyway guys, there's other things that I could possibly mention, but a lot of them are really small, and I want to keep this video a little shorter for my editor and not kill him. But yeah, this is totally just for fun. Most likely the live action is going to be very different, and I trust them to adapt it. And frankly, a lot of this is meaningless without the substance to back it up, which is essentially writing the screenplay, second by second, minute by minute. What is being included where? How is each episode structured? Everything, right? And I'm not gonna do that because why would I? But doing that would be the best way to learn what you can and can't do. So yeah, I just want to make sure that was said, and as always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Like, use this video as an inspiration, and leave a comment down below. Remember to check out my books. The Booms, Volume 1 and 2 is out. Volume 3 comes out October 4th. Links in the description as well as pinned in the comments. And if you guys happen to read it, feel free to leave a review to let other people know what you felt. Like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join this squad, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.